This is the Sober Boozers Club podcast.
Welcome everybody to the Sober Boozers Club podcast. My name is Ben Gibbs. I'm an alcoholic and I've been sober since January 2022. In that time, I have been navigating the world of alcohol-free beers, sampling some of the best that the world has to offer. In this podcast, we're going to talk to people from within these circles and find out a little bit about their journey. So you sit back, relax, and enjoy. Today's episode is a little bit of a wild card because we're not talking about beer, can you believe it? We're talking about cider. In particular, we're talking to the founder of my favourite cider company in the world, John Logue, who is the founder of Chance Clean Cider. They came into the market very recently and, to be honest, completely blew me away. So it makes sense that me and him should have a little chat. John, hello, thank you very much for coming to talk to me today. I'm really excited to have you on this. You've released the best cider I think I ever drank.
Well, I mean, if I wasn't already a fan of yourself, it's gone through the roof. But yeah, thank you. I mean, I don't stand on top of the apples and do any of the technical stuff. We have an amazing producer with Aston Manor. But yeah, the kind of strategy, the taste profile, all the R&D was all me. So up until the point, my son said this morning in the car, he was like, "But you make cider, Daddy." And I was like, someone else does it who's much better at it. But yeah, we're really proud of the liquid and, you know, the kind of plaudits we've had in the imposter syndrome that you live with even with the experience I've got, you know, you do just think maybe your dad and your mate will buy it, and it's been really cool.
Yeah, like I'll admit I don't drink that much cider because I'll be honest, the stuff gives me indigestion. So when you reached out and you said, like, can I send you a couple to try, it was like, okay. And it's always like, I don't really know what I'm talking about with it. But I drank it and I was like, shit, man. This is close, as close to I'm not going to say the real thing, but it's as close to alcohol cider as I've ever got. Yeah. Like, you don't get any of that. The sweet, it's not overly sweet. I mean, it's sweet enough to be delicious, but it's not overly sweet. It doesn't feel like a child's drink. It doesn't taste like just apple juice. It's complex and it's damn good stuff.
Thank you. And like, you know, the elephant in the room is that when you remove something, whether it be sugar or gluten or alcohol, from a very, like something that you've had a lot of experience with, there's a hole missing. And, you know, to try and get as close to it feeling like there is alcohol in there's a lot of things we've done to try and help that. But yeah, that's the ultimate thing. Oh, wow, I thought it had alcohol in it. Or wow, it tastes like cider. Like, job done. Let's not overcomplicate things as a marketing person. We just want to give someone an experience that they might historically have had in an alcohol occasion or an alcohol drink without alcohol in it. One of the things, not to jump ahead, but the reason why we called it clean cider is because, you know, the factor of it being low alc or non-alc, depending on which way the wind's blowing in terms of our government and the EU, it's just one of, you know, it's gluten-free, it's vegan, it's British, it's all 100% apples, it's low calorie, it's low sugar-ish, because cider is quite high in sugar anyway. I'm not making it, it's, you know, kombucha. But then one of the seventh factor is that it's low alcohol. So the fact that that is one of a load of other things, we wanted to try and encapsulate of it being this slightly new style of cider, not just like defining yourself as it's got no alcohol in it or it's low in alcohol, because we're all on that journey of trying to change the mentalities of people around that language. And, you know, with my experience in it, you need to help people along changes in behavior, not just expect them to come on the journey with you.
Yeah, for sure. Like, why cider? So what was it that made you go, okay, I want to do this cider and really pursue that? I mean, I know you've got a lot of strings to your bow, but what kind of put you onto this? Where did it all begin?
There's a marketing story and there's a category story and there's an owner story. And I guess the very short one is that I love alcohol and alcoholic drinks, from like Guinness to wine to whiskey to cider. I've been very fortunate to work in a lot of different categories. But I was having an occasion where I wanted to have a low alc cider and there just wasn't one for me, which then you go, most people go, oh, I wish they made one. And then with my background, you go, well, I could probably work out how to make one. So it was absolutely just a me search of me going, if I want to have a non-alc beer, or I want to have a non-alc Guinness, or I want to have a spirit mixer or an aperitif or a wine, there's some really good solutions out there. And there's an increasingly, from when I came up with this project 3.5 years ago to now, my God, like the category is incredibly, there's not even a difference in my opinion. Yeah, it's dense. But then in cider, I was kind of looking at it. And my background, I was at Rekorderlig for 5 years around the world. And we had reduced sugar and removed alcohol as a project. And then when I was going in with that site test, I was just seeing flavored ciders as a non-alc option with Kopparberg and Rekorderlig. And then you could scratch the surface and find some apple ciders, but they weren't prevalent. And I loved Aspall, I love Thatchers, I love Hawks, but I also love Somerset ciders. And I was kind of going, wow, if I could just have like an Aspall's non-alc or a Thatcher's non-alc. So it purely was me. And then speaking to a few friends, it was like, well, there's got to be a few more than just me. And then I'm very lucky to know people in the category, in the industry, and a few just kind of like shots across the bow, like, what do you reckon? And them going, yeah, like there's a massive hole. Then you do your research and you see the third biggest category in the country is cider, and it's massively underrepresented. And then you start to look for why those reasons are. And whenever I was in my investment conversations, the biggest question I would get is like, what's your biggest fear? And I'd be like, there's someone down the road with this thought, because surely I can't be the only person who's doing it. And actually, as we've got more into the development, there are a few great non-outsiders, but they might be French or they might be of a sweet profile. And again, I was just kind of going like, we make brilliant British apple cider. It's 70% of the market share. Here we are. So far, so good. I met that guy down the road with the same idea.
So before that, what was it that you were involved in? Obviously, you hinted at Rekorderlig, but what's your kind of history in the field?
So I sort of, after I was told by my parents to get a proper job after being a non-commercially successful musician, should we say, I was pretty good, just didn't make a lot of money. I just desperately wanted to go to Australia after going to my mate's wedding there. And there was a company called Diageo. I knew they had Guinness and Bushmills, and I thought, oh, I can probably get to Australia with a big company like that. So I worked at Diageo. I learned a lot about it on the way, but was there for 7 years. And my final year was in Australia. So I went to work in customer marketing in Australia. And then through music, ironically, met the guys who take Rekorderlig around the world, who are called Chili Marketing, because it's all made in Sweden, but it's kind of licensed through a marketing business. And joined them and had, as I said, 5 years, ended up as head of innovation for them. So I was working on lots of these kind of new flavors and pack formats and cocktail cans and just trying to like diversify this bubble of flavored cider. Had an amazing time. Next job was to go back to Australia or Sweden, and didn't really want to do that for personal kind of life changing, married and with a kid coming. And BrewDog knocked on the door. So I went to work for BrewDog for 3 years, worked on the AF project there, I was head of customer marketing. So again, working with the founder, working in an innovation space of like flavored cider, if you remember, after the Magnum effect was just wild, like Kopparberg and Heringer and Rekorderlig. And then going to craft beer when that blew up was just fascinating to be a part of. Left BrewDog, like everyone does, in an interesting way.
Very interesting way.
Went to work. Yeah, went to work for a really cool company called Atom Brands that own Master of Malt. Head marketing there, really enjoyed my time there. And then COVID hit. And just like most people were just sat there going like, what do I actually want to do? And at that time I was helping mentor some younger sort of marketeers. And one of them was in the Lucky Saint business. So I went to work for Lucky Saint right at the beginning. I was head of marketing there. And again, yeah, you then get this kind of like, okay, founders, category growth. And because I'd done AF at BrewDog, done AF at Rekorderlig, was working customer with Lucky Saint, you just have this like real understanding of it before everyone else, because there's plenty of amazing customer marketers and marketers in whiskey, but in non-alc, because it's so young, there's not many of us have been doing it this long. So I left there and went to work as a consultant for 3 years. Still am. I still do a little bit on the side, but initially was working for Distill Ventures, who are, Diageo's innovation, Seedlip, all that kind of amazing stuff. I didn't work on Seedlip, but I was in that area and just kind of found myself going, and through the help of a mentor, just going, surely you can do this. Like, you get paid to help people do this. But even at that point, with all that experience and all the excitement and all the kind of connections, you still go, there's still stuff that you've never thought of, like raising money through investment. That's a whole new world to learn. And then, production. I've done plenty of innovation and plenty of pack format changes. But then getting someone to make a cider for you and then ship it somewhere to be bottled and then put it on a pallet off your own money, it's been thrilling, but it's also been, and that's kind of, not that I have a huge following on my TikTok, but my TikTok is not really about Chance Cider per se. It's about being a founder. Because I kind of thought like it would be amazing if someone was just going, it's kind of like what's going on. And a lot of, I'm pinging around here, Ben, sorry, but like the name Chance has a brand rationale for it. But also it was about that mate in the pub who goes, oh, you know what? I'm going to do this next year. And they never do it. So it was like, well, I took the chance to do it. So a lot of how I speak on LinkedIn and in that TikTok environment is very much like balls out going, I had a shit review on Amazon. Like, what do you do? Like, what the hell is SCIS? What's going on with, you want to join a route to market, but you've got to fill out these new line forms. Like today, the reason why I couldn't jump on earlier is because a pallet hadn't arrived at my new big distribution company called Breaks. It's the biggest route to market distribution in the country and for food. Like, no one teaches you that logistics bit. So yeah, my background has been inspiring and brilliant to kind of get to the stage it's at. But also like there's always things that you have to learn on the job. But that's kind of the cool bit.
Yeah, I mean, like as you were talking, then it reminded me of pretty early on into my journey into this world as just someone that shouts on the internet holding a bottle or a can in his hand. After about maybe a year and a bit, I was like, I should do a beer, right? Like I kind of know how it would get to market now. And I Googled it, like, because I've got no idea. And after about 5 minutes, it was like, no, fuck that. That's like, I got no idea how to do this. So yeah, I mean, having been around the industry for so long and having seen all of these brands and being a part of these brands, obviously we won't go into BrewDog, but you know, to then take that next step and go, right, I'm going to do all of this and then be hit by a load of other shit that you wouldn't have thought of beforehand. Like, it's not just the liquid, is it? It's everything surrounding that liquid.
Yeah, and I vividly remember I was doing a project for a client in Manchester called Hip Hop, and I was walking down the road and I was speaking to my cider producer, and it was at that stage of like, got the money, like we can buy the liquid. You have to buy quite a lot because obviously, like, they don't just make you 20 bottles. And I was kind of chasing some information about the packaging part. So obviously you make a liquid and then you have to do things to it to get it into a bottle, like carbonate it, pasteurize it because there's no alcohol in it, all those fun bits. And they basically just dropped this bomb and said, we're really sorry, we can't actually run you on our 330ml bottling line.
Right.
And I remember putting the phone and saying, look, can you make my cider? And they were like, yeah, you'll just have to get it bottled by someone. And after me initially like lying on the floor for 5 minutes in the middle of Manchester and getting back up, I thought, okay, well, I can speak to some people and I can understand how this works and find the people. But I instantly then had this like moment, maybe a couple of days later going, imagine like I didn't have my experience and I'd got walloped by that. There must be so many people out there that get hit by these sidewinders that they've just got no kind of experience to kind of manage it. And, you know, I've got so much respect to it, but there's also this kind of thought that maybe if someone is thinking about doing it, I'm really positive about founders all being quite close because we're all very similar. We're all a bit mad in the way that we want to do these things, but we're all right at the beginning, very isolated. So we had like a founder Christmas do. I'm part of this really great group called the Lonely Founders. And again, it's just that almost like support group for these guys who, and remember, right, like it's like being in a band, like you've got to be on the PR trail. You've got to talk about everything's going well. You're on LinkedIn, blah, blah, blah. And then you might like press send and then sit back and go, how do I work FBA for Amazon? Or how do I work out the margin for shipping something into a supermarket versus? So yeah, I'm very grateful that I have the experience, but also I'm very open to speaking to people to kind of suss it out. And I've got so much respect for someone who maybe was, you know, a butcher and decided to launch a beer. Not many crossings of experience.
With the creation of an alcohol-free cider, I know a little bit about what goes into making a beer. You know, I know water, hops, yeast, malt, etc., mash, boil, whatever they do. Like, I understand that. Cider, I've got no idea. Like, I know it's got apples in, and I know it's not apple juice per se. How do you create that? And then what's the process like to make it alcohol-free? You can tell I don't know what I'm on about, but you probably do.
It's cool. Right? And you know, the biggest cider market in the world, you know, we used to make cider and give it to Julius Caesar to go back to Rome. Like, we are very good at cider in this country. But I think the word cider encapsulates so many things from like Perry to Baby Sham to Rekorderlig to Chance to Somerset Scrumpy. I think that kind of helps. So, it's not a silly question. Basically, cider is when you take the juice from an apple and you ferment it to create cider. Very similarly, when you take the juice from a pear and you ferment it, you get perry or pommier,
Right.
I think is the other one. So the technical term is really simple in the fact that you are creating alcohol through the sugars of the thing. In the same way vodka comes from grain and whiskey comes from beer, that you basically then, all that kind of stuff. What we do, and there are a few different ways to do this, we have a very high ABV cider. So we have a cider that is around between sort of 8 and 10%. So what they do is when we make cider, it only happens once a year. They squish all the apples, technical term, and then they basically produce the cider at that point. And then what they're able to do is cider lasts for a long time. So we have a 2-year shelf life. But with the process we have, they take this very high ABV cider and then they cut it with water, which is called liquoring down. Exactly the same principle as when we were talking about Guinness. So Guinness is produced at 8%. They liquor it down with water. And whether you believe the myth or not, the water counts, right? Because it's the Leffe water or it's British water, but it's all the same water. When you have a cask strength whiskey, it's produced doesn't stop at 41%. It will come out at whatever it wants to. And then they use water to chop it down. So we liquor down. Because we have effectively diluted that cider down, there's a lot of properties that are missing because obviously you've taken a lot of the body out, like cordial. You mix it down if you don't put enough in.
I'm glad you said cordial because that's exactly where my brain went. It was like, oh, it's like a cider shandy. So I'm glad you said that. I don't feel so silly now.
Or milk. I don't drink tea. My wife drinks a lot. She's Irish, but like milk in your tea. Put too much milk in. I don't taste the tea anymore. So what we do is when they produce the cider from the apple juice, a proportion of that apple juice, they basically take it and they remove a lot of the heat. They use heat to remove a lot of the water from it. And that basically produces a concentrate. Now, that's not a negative word because I know you can go to the shop and see bitty orange juice and concentrate orange juice. But effectively, it's just the juice that hasn't been fermented either naturally or with yeast. And they remove it. And it basically becomes this really viscous, really like sticky, like thick juice. And what we do with that is we use it to put back into the cider, which has obviously lost a lot of its ABV because it's become water, and effectively give a load of body back. Now, because I wanted to have a cider which was quite dry and had some slight notes of sort of woody notes, we use one of those juices, the high fructose cordial, back in to almost use a bit like a whiskey would. So whenever you blend whiskies, you take lots of different whiskies and you blend them together to get your final taste profile. So we effectively have a cider that we remove the ABV by putting water in or dealkalizing through liquoring down. We then blend in this really bittersweet juice from bittersweet apples to get us that taste profile. So whenever someone says it's basically just apple juice, well, it was in the same way that a chip used to be a potato. We've done something to it. And it's, what's the difference between hop water and beer? Well, one has alcohol in it. 100% British juice, 100% British apples. We make a cider. We just do that process. There's other things you can do. So some people can then remove the alcohol through heat evaporation or rotovapping. Or what you can do is you can effectively not be a cider and you just put cidery flavors in. That you could argue is a juice, but we're not. We're a cider and we just remove alcohol by dilution effectively and then blend back in that really great taste profile to give that body back.
I can't even begin to get my head around what that looks like when you're doing it from scratch. Like it's mad.
But that said, it's very doable. Like you can just get out there and have a go. And as long as you are, I think, making sure that you're financially sound, that you aren't like lay up at night going, I better sell this final pallet. Like I would encourage anyone to have a go at these things, especially with the onset of Shopify and dare I say AI and Amazon. It's not as hard. Back in the day, you would add like build a brewery and open a bottle shop or try and speak to Tesco's. Now the ability to be a founder, even things like Etsy, where I bought your t-shirt throw in it. Like people can have a go at stuff, and I think it's such a thrilling kind of world to get involved with. But I'm thankful every day for the hard knocks that I've got to be here.
Something that resonated with me just was, you say like 3 years ago, the concept was planted in your brain. And it's only taken off recently. Like there's a lot that went into this before launch, which I suppose is a good, well, it's, you can tell it's a well thought through brand. Because when you appeared, it wasn't like, you get some companies that appear and you go, who's that? Not sure. Like I've seen a fair few in my 3 years of doing this. I've seen a fair few like brewers start up and it just doesn't look the part. Whereas as soon as you guys appeared, it was like, I think this is going to be really good. So it's a long process.
Yeah, thank you. I think, look, if you're drop shipping something, if you are taking something from another country or you're whatever, it is easier. The creation of a liquid has so many variations of. Initially, I thought I was going to make it with smaller kind of cider makers, and that just wasn't feasible. So then I found my partner in Aston Manor, and there's a negotiation or an understanding of whether that works right. You don't want to make those mistakes. You then have the R&D part of it, of briefing them of what you want, then went through 3 or 4 different rounds of cider innovation in terms of a bit drier, a bit more fizzy. Can we have a slightly more tropical note? Can we have a bit less of the woody note? Excuse me. So all of that, then you're almost trying to prove a concept. Then there's this whole thing of trying to get people to give you some money, because I'm not from a, family money. So an investor who's just invested like last week, I started talking to him in August last year. And that's not through any apathy. That's just, it takes a long time. So you then have this kind of element of, okay, well, I've got to put the concept together. You almost have to prove the concept before it's been proven for someone to lend you some money or invest in your business. Then when you get to that point of you're going to market, you have all of the kind of infrastructure of, like, for example, bottling lines don't run every day. There's lots of people running to do it. So you have to then book your slot. You have to make sure that the liquid is made by that point. You then have to buy like caps and cardboard. So all of that logistic stuff is a full-time job to a certain extent. And then you're right. Like, I'm very fortunate that one of my investors owns a fancy, cool agency in London, and they helped with a lot of the brand positioning. But a lot of the thinking was, let's create something that could go on TV next week, although it's not going to go on TV for 2 years, if it ever did. But having that brand architecture, as we call it, and having that forethought of what you want to do is super important, because as a consultant, I'll speak to lots of brands. They go, yeah, we're going through a rebrand. Mate, calm down. Like, you're not Pepsi. So sometimes you can kind of have this mentality. It's called like ready, fire, aim. So effectively just say, yes, we're going to do it. And it's better being 80% there than 100% not. But also having the kind of forethought of like what we want to represent, who we want to talk to. So from the first, we're in month 8 now, and we're only really getting into marketing now in terms of meeting with content creators and looking at what we're going to do in terms of our look and feel, and how do we engage consumers, and what's the story, and what is refreshingly present. Because actually the first 6 months is like, find a sales team, work out your pricing, get some people to try the liquid, be happy that the liquid, I mean, we called it batch 1, and we'll always have a different batch because I think that's important. But this might not have been the liquid we stayed on. You have these assumptions, and I guess there's an equal balance of wanting to just not get in the way of yourself to get something out there, but also taking the time to maybe think a bit further down the line. And again, that comes from experience, of observing other businesses that had founders that maybe had investors who had useful talents. So not like someone who's just got a bit of spare like cash, having an investor who comes in who owns a below the line agency and above the line agency, or maybe someone who's prevalent in the grocery or the on-premise space. These are things that, I guess if I ever write a book there, like they're the things in that playbook of going, start to think about what's going to happen down the road, but don't ever knock it down the road by getting in your way.
I can relate so much of what you just said to playing in like local bands, like with the rebrand. Oh, we're not getting gigs. Maybe we need to change our name. It's like, no. That's not. Maybe we just need to get the shit good before we worry about that sort of stuff. Like,
and it's people, I think they're codependent, right? Because bands are brands.
Yeah.
And brands, I think, behave like bands. As a couple of ex-musicians or current musician, Ben, And like I always think about the longevity of great bands, and you look at take that playing every hole in the wall to having this incredibly long career versus a pop idol, or the Foo Fighters, maybe a bad example, or even a Coldplay or an Ed Sheeran who played everywhere, and then they have this longevity. With a brand, you have to kind of pay your dues and make sure that you are working to build your community and looking after that community and not like jumping it. So it doesn't happen a lot, but say if a brand was suddenly catapulted into Tesco's tomorrow and they're in 2,700 stores, they haven't done the hard work to kind of build that community, to learn, to get the 10,000 hours, to learn what it's like when you break a string on stage and not do that in front of 9 million people on a Saturday night on a shiny floor. So I think, the relationship between brands and bands and brands, if you know what I mean, is really key, because the best beer brands or, cider brands or training, they're part of a culture. And I kind of wanted to create something with Chance where it wasn't just something that people thought tasted really good. They'd actually think about wearing a t-shirt of it. And I spoke to someone a while back and I said, if you'd have gone to someone 5 years ago, like, people are going to steal Guinness 00 glasses and wear Guinness 00 t-shirts or Lucky Saint socks, you'd be like, yeah, man, probably wear a non-out brand. But because of all this hard work by great brand teams and by quality liquids and by community, we are finding that these things are just as cool as when someone's wearing a Red Bull cap or I don't know, insert cool consumer products.
Yeah, I get you though. Like, I think Guinness has been such an important brand for the non-alc scene. And I think it's just because people resonate with that brand and people go, oh, well, if they're really pushing this, then it must be okay to drink. Because the liquid in itself, it's fine. It's fine. It's not amazing. It's not terrible. It's just fine, right? I mean, that's my personal opinion. But it's not something that I tried and went, oh my God, this is the best stout I've ever drank. I've had far superior stouts. It's just, you look at Guinness and you trust them because, it's Guinness. They're famous for their adverts. They're famous for what they do. And if they're putting so much time and effort into promoting their alcohol-free, then it must be valid. And I think that's had a real impact on people that do drink non-alc drinks. Like the first thing that a lot of people say to me is, oh yeah, alcohol-free, I've had a bit. I'll tell you what's good? Guinness. It's always that conversation. Have you tried the Guinness? And it's like, yes, Steve, I've tried the Guinness many times.
But it's, if I get into like a consumer behavior angle of like what we've been looking at for a long time in non-alc, it's all about something, and it's about permission, and it's giving yourself permission to want to be permission and kind of confidence that this is going to taste great and I will want to buy another one. But also it's the permission to look in front of your friends, and we are, habitual, like pack animals, right?
Yeah.
And we used to have a term in Australia called bar defendability. And basically it was like, can someone come back from the bar with a round or something? And if their mate goes, we can swear on here, right? What the F is that? They can instantly come back and go, well, I'm going to tell you. And that's part of hipsterism. And I think that's why craft beer is really exciting, because people suddenly felt, I'm cooler than you because I know what a nipper is and I know what like IBUs are and all this kind of stuff. So to have that permission into non-alc has taken a few different things. And I totally agree. Like Guinness has suddenly been, oh, well, if Guinness, because Guinness drinkers kind of sit on a higher echelon as well, because it doesn't taste very nice, Guinness, for the first 50 pints. But then when you get into it, that's what me and my best mate Dave did. We, in our youth, followed the Guinness girls around, not in a weird way, in Manchester, getting our free pints. Because we knew when we sat at the table and we were drinking Guinness and our mates were drinking Fosters, we were cooler than them. So the kind of prestige of that. And then there's lots of very smart things that they've done in terms of the Premiership sponsorship and the awareness and all the advertising and the merchandise and such. So I think you're totally right. It's like going, oh, wow, if they're doing it, then it's kind of all right, right? And then you've got Lucky Saint, and then you've got Seedlip, and then you've got, all of the kind of growth of these really great brands that have come into it. Diageo's pushed a lot of it in terms of like Tanqueray and even Captain coming in and such. But unless those big brands join the party, we all kind of, is that jock at school. Like if he's doing it, then maybe it'll be all right for us to do.
Yeah, and on that note of like these the big brands having a real impact on the market, I think there's also brands that are really not doing enough. Like, I don't know if you've tried Birra Moretti alcohol free. Like, the fuck is that? It's awful. Like, if you go to a supermarket, 5 out of 6 beers that you might pick up are just not good. And I think that has such a negative impact on the industry because a lot of people are trying these drinks and going, ugh, that's horrible. Whereas Guinness,
Yeah.
they've got away with, I say got away with, it is a good liquid, but it's not like, it doesn't blow your brains out. It's just fine. And when you talk to people, it's like, whoa, that's amazing. And it's like, there's so many people that could be experiencing such more wonderful things if they just knew
Yeah.
about it.
I think there's two things. There's one, like, I used to cop a load of shit from my mates in Australia who had these amazing artisan cider brands. And they were like, Rekorderlig. Like, we were nearly 30% of the market. We were huge in Australia. And my kind of position was like, you're not really here unless I'm here, in a bit of a wind up your mate way, but you're bringing people into that category. And there's a reason why you have Jack Daniels and you have Johnny Walker, but then you have malt. People need to be kind of handheld in. So I think the bigger brands that are doing that, you have to trust that someone might find their way in because of a Birra Moretti, but might end up finding a Cloudwater or a We Could Be Friends or a On Apollo or whatever it is. I think the other thing that's important is that, we are seeing there's kind of 2 stages to non-alc, where you have what we would call first generation or beta or range extension, where someone goes, this is the version of that. So Guinness Zero, Peroni Zero, Heineken Zero, Corona Zero, insert the 50 different Italian beers there are now for some reason.
All from Italy.
But then the next thing that comes along is people go, well, I'm going to produce a liquid because I want to produce a great liquid, not because it's a range extension. And that's where Lucky Saint comes in. And then that's where we position ourselves of going, we didn't make a version of, there's not like Chance 5%. And we went, oh, it's a bit of money and then they're non-alc drinkers. It was, no, we're going to make something for that. And that's what you'll then see as the next kind of growth. And you've seen that in craft beer where the big boys kind of came in, but then that spurred on. It almost like just kind of broke the door open for everyone to come in. And I think we will only see more and more people as consumers have more trust and permission, as customers give more space and bars give more taps. You'll get more people maybe sat in their front room going, I reckon I could actually have a crack at a non-alc brand.
You're treading a dangerous line here because my head is ticking and I only have limited resources. Birmingham tap water and some hops. Go.
I've drunk worse.
Most likely, Birra Moretti Zero for one. But you are right. Like, there are so many more brands releasing things, and there's so much more out there where you can go pretty much anywhere and get a good liquid to drink. How have you found the kind of, what's the reaction been to what you've put out? Has it been mostly positive? Have you had any kickback in terms of it being non-alc, or do you think we're mostly past that now?
I think, we're quite strategic in terms of initially you are playing in the right spaces. So again, from my experience, early adoption of places that serve food, slightly more refined menus of cocktail bars or like more city centre bars, hotels, these are the consumers and the customers that kind of got it early. The spit and sawdust, like I can see through pubs from my house. So like the Cornichon have Chance. The Georgian Dragon doesn't really, and the Red Lion won't for a long time. Because again, the consumers and those occasions are slightly different. And then you kind of buck the trend of like, we do really well at football grounds and those kind of things. But we've definitely been quite thoughtful of where we tried to play early on. There are some spaces where that bucks the trend. So places like the Warehouse Project in Manchester, they don't stock us, but they stock non-alc brands. And you start to think, oh, what, people are at a rave and they're not drunk, or like gig venues. Again, you go, well, people go to festivals and they go to, Apollos and such to get smashed in and watch a band. But actually they're starting to change. So our strategy of being in the pubs that already had a good non-alc beer adoption was kind of our space. In terms of the supermarkets, we are absolutely seeing that, especially because of beer and spirits, they've started to give, you can go look in your Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Morrison's, Asda, Waitrose, lots of that. Like the bays are bigger, right? They're getting bigger and bigger. And that was the same with craft beer. And that's then influencing the next step down for us. Like my shop through there is a co-op. And you go, like co-op's got like 6 cider brands. Like you've got no non-alc. So it's about trying to make sure that you're going to these places at the right time, not just because they get it, but you also don't want to go to a place where the consumers don't get it and basically quite quickly you get delisted.
Yeah.
I think from an e-commerce point of view, from our website and from Amazon, there's a really high adoption again, because in the places where people might struggle to understand what you're doing or need a little bit of help to understand it, digital lets you paint pictures and tell stories. So that's a really exciting place. I think the big thing for us this year and the big insight will be when we start to overlap of summer, beer gardens, festivals, music. There's got to be tens of thousands of people that are going, all right, I want to have 6 drinks I'm saying 6 drinks at this gig. If I can have 4 of them are non-alc and not really know the difference, because 90% of non-alc occasions have alcohol. Like people are switching. There's lots of cool terms for it, zebraing and bookending and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I have only heard of zebra striping in the last maybe month. And it's like, what? How have I missed this? Like this is supposed to be my thing, right? Like talking.
Oh, it's a big thing, man.
But yeah, I fucking love it.
I'll email you the deck on it. It's very interesting. But it's that kind of thing of, I think, one of the big pushbacks that you'll get in non-alc is like, well, I'm not pregnant. I'm not, for whatever reason, choosing not to, religion, disposition, addiction. I'm not pregnant. I'm not driving. Like, what's the point? But actually, the point you're missing is that if you take out alcohol and non-alc and just go, it's an occasion. So if I can stay in a pub or a restaurant or go to my mate's house for longer, that's the goal. Now, what can facilitate that if I can't have the normal things that I drink in that period? There's a great brand that I'm friends with called 6%, and they're a 6% wine. Now, that's not low alc, right? But the way I've spoken to them about it is like, well, you're 2 glasses of wine at lunch, not 1.
Yeah,
because of that. And starting to think about how what we're trying to do is live in traditionally alcohol occasions, but give people reasons to stay longer. Because we've all been there where you're driving, you've had 3 pints of Coke and you go, I'm going home because I just feel like I am a bottle of Coke. If you could then have those drinks with your friends and kind of understand, be involved with the moment because you're drinking something that tastes great, like that's really interesting. The big stat last year was like £800 million is lost in pubs to tap water sales. And by sales, I mean, so they've done the math to look at that. And it's again, like Mike, I've got a 5 and a 9-year-old and they drink cordial, they drink Vimto and stuff. But like, don't go to a fucking pub, have a £15 burger and chips or a sirloin steak for £90 and then get a cordial. Like, have we not moved on a little bit?
Yeah.
So it's all these kind of moments and occasions that we can kind of elongate. And I think more and more places are getting it. And that's where we're kind of trying to follow suit.
And I think it can change the hospitality industry as well. More alcohol-free options. Like the pub doesn't have to be just a place where you go in the evening. The pub can be a place where you go to work in the afternoon, and you can have a beer, you can have a cider, you can have whatever you would consider an evening drink can be a lunchtime drink. Because everyone loves a lunchtime pint, but it's delicious. It doesn't just have to be exclusive to evenings. And I think that's where venues can look into, okay, where are these people that we can attract in during the day that maybe wouldn't want to drink alc, but enjoy a nice drink.
Totally, mate. And there's, you can imagine the amount of insight and podcasts and decks and all this shit that I get given in terms of like all of these understandings of consumer behavior. But it took the little known marketing genius Window Kid. He's a very cool rapper. And he has gone sober recently because of a medical reason. And he just said the most profound thing, which I think summed it all up. And he was like, if I go to the pub with you and I'm having a beer and you're having a non-alc beer, it's the same beer. Like no one is going to get battered off that first pint and suddenly feel ostracized from the conversation. And even if you have 2 beers. So if you think about all those moments where you might want to go and have 2 beers, you don't actually need the alcohol. And working at Rekorderlig for a long time, which is, an 8 million case brand, like big old, I'm not promoting this, but I would be very interested if anyone has ever been drunk on Rekorderlig. Like it just isn't a drink that you drink enough to get drunk on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But why are you drinking it then? oh, because it tastes nice and I feel I'm holding a pint and it's sunny and it's refreshing.
Yep.
And then you go, oh, so I don't, and then it's kind of an evil thought. You go, oh, well, so I don't just drink to get drunk. And I think craft beer's done that, right? When I was at BrewDog, people were like, oh my God, like they've got like a 13% beer, like, they're trying to promote people getting battered. No, like you don't drink a pint of 47% whiskey, you sip it.
Yeah.
And trying to change that, the reason why the alcohol is high is because it creates a taste profile or a reaction in your metabolism or mouth or whatever it is to kind of give you a sensation. You don't just drink 10 pints of something so you got the courage to get a kebab and try and snog someone. Like if you really take it down to what it is, it's about a glass of something really tasty. So if you then can create that and it takes away all of the other things that, I could drive home, I can go to the office in the morning, I'm not going to have disrupted sleep. And we're not at all like a sober brand. We're very, very open to any consumer who wants to drink us at any time. Like that's when it gets exciting. And you go, okay, well, what we're trying to do here is just give someone something amazing to drink.
Yeah. And I think there is no argument against that. The amount of people that ask me, what's the point? And the response is, it tastes good. And but you can't come back against it unless you really dislike the taste of it. And then
let's all eat space food.
Yeah.
Just have a pill every day with all the carbs you need. Like, sorry, just drink Huel. Like all these people having Huel at lunch, like whatever, that's your journey, right? I like to eat something nice at lunch. So if you use the same thing of food is not fuel. Food is a really wonderful, communicative, tasty thing that turns out to be fuel. Alcoholic drinks, non-alcoholic drinks in general, are not just there to facilitate your I'm getting quite fancy in, inhibitions dropping or being drunk. Can't think of the I word for being drunk.
Intoxication.
That's the guy.
Yes, says the alcoholic.
What about if it's just a really tasty thing?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, that's for me as an alcoholic. Like, it's gotta be. I am probably more snobby now about my beer and my cider and my wine and everything else than I ever was before. Because beforehand, I loved a couple of nice drinks, and then I loved anything. Like, what will get me drunk the most, in the most resourceful way possible? How can I get to the place I want to get to? Whereas now, I'm drinking purely for flavor. So I've learned so much more about my palate and about what I like and about what beers I think are good and what drinks I think are tasty. Because I'm drinking it for the one purpose, other than to, not relapse, is because I enjoy it and I like it.
Yeah.
It has become a bit of an obsession of mine. And when people kind of try to argue that point, it's like, okay, let's flip it then. Why are you drinking, let's say, cider? Why are you drinking cider if the only point of it is alcohol? Why are you drinking it if that's your honest thought? Because you may as well just drink vodka. It will get you there quicker.
The biggest selling spirit mixer in Australia is a vodka lime and soda.
Okay.
Vodka technically is odorless, senseless, and tasteless, right? So it doesn't taste of anything. Yep. So basically what you're doing is you're drinking something to get drunk. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But it kind of gives you that thing of people go, I've got friends who go, I don't really like craft beer. I don't like the taste of it. It's like, well, why are you drinking insert cooking lager? And they're like, well, because I, like you said, want to get to that point. And I think, well, that's interesting. What was really interesting is talking about then is, I guess, the inspiration you've had of really wanting to learn more and understand what you like the taste of. But like we're sat here now because of your ability then to translate that and engage people, telling people about that. So if you're sat in a pub and there's four of you drinking a pint of Coke, you might have a bit of chat and you might talk about the football, but you're not going to go, do you know what? The toffee notes in this Pepsi Max are slightly different. But if you can sit around and you have these incredibly exciting non-alc beers as well, you also have that other level of that geekiness and banter and, did you know that guy who made Chance, he's got stupid floppy hair and,
It's the culture though, isn't it? It's the culture of it. And I think, again, I will confess I've not been a part of the cider world ever. Like I've not drunk much of it, but, I know that cider exists, but I've not seen anybody take up that heritage because there is a massive heritage in it and run with it in terms of alcohol free. You touched on it earlier. If you think alcohol free cider, traditionally you'd go kiwi and lime, and it's just a soft drink. Whereas when I drank yours, it was like, shit, this is like, I feel like my granddad would have loved this. That was the first thing that came to my brain, was because he was a big cider drinker. I mean, he was a bloody farmer. So, and I think that's really important with a lot of these drinks, like with beers. It's like, this has been brewed. There's a whole process here. Each batch is a little bit different, and it's just a wonderful thing. A soft drink or an orange juice, it's just like, yeah, I got that from that refill fountain over there. It's got a really girthy glass. It's just boring, isn't it?
And all the kids, when they were like mixing all of the soda fountains and Nando's, remember that?
Yeah,
was
man.
thing?
Yeah, man.
Like,
See, that I can get on board with. That
Yeah.
is still perfectly
a little bit
acceptable.
of mixology.
Yeah.
But it's a past job when I was at CrossFit. People are going, what's the point of like a non-alc spirit?
Yeah.
And when the whole conversation at CrossFit was like, now this is a flavor building block. So if you want to make something which evokes that reaction or that flavor profile, you need to have these tools. So don't just think of it as like, it doesn't taste like whiskey. It's like, well, what does whiskey taste like? Like, what does wine taste like?
Yeah.
What does cider taste like? What does beer taste like? When you start to break it down a bit like, the gastronomy of food, like there's a reason why you put 2 or 3 things on your fork when you eat it, because you're blending them together. And for us to have another new evolving category to play with all those things, it's amazing. Because look, alcohol is to a certain extent on its way out. I'm not saying it's dying tomorrow, but we've got an increasingly younger consumer who are disenfranchised with it, are not bothered about it. We're having more and more brilliant options instead of it. And all the other stuff, it's not going to die. It's just going to iterate.
Yeah.
And the fact that
Yeah,
it's
it's
got
gonna
less
evolve.
ABV than before, it's just one thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a very positive thing. I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm actually very pro-alcohol. In fact, I miss it dearly. But I don't want to see people not drink ever, because I think it's a beautiful thing, really. Like,
Pubs,
some of my finest moments in life have been when I've got that lovely 3-pint buzz on. Like, it's a wonderful place to be. I just took it too far, but that's just me, right? But I still want to be around these places, and I still want to be around these people that are being a little bit silly.
and then
Because it's great. I just want something in my hand that isn't a fucking orange juice.
we worked with a company called Clarity, and they do sober events. And I found it fascinating to go into that space. And for all intents and purposes, if you'd have rocked in at 9 o'clock, you wouldn't have known that it was sober or not, because people were dancing and having a good time. But there was this observation from this lady working there, and she just went, but you just haven't got that vibe that maybe it could just turn at any point.
Yeah.
So you go, okay, you still got that cool thing. And then you go to like, I'm a football fan. I went to watch the football in the pub on Sunday because my wife kicked me out of the house and my kids all want to watch Paw Patrol or something. And that moment of when the goal went in, you jump up and your mate's next to you and there's people across the pub, and, like those places have to stay open. Like walking in and the barman, I'm not getting all like cheers, but the barman knowing people and it being a hub of the community and people celebrating, and it can still exist, and it will exist with the onset of these great non-alc brands. Otherwise, we've got this whole huge hole in our communities. And in a world where like butchers and I'm getting all sort of stuff going on, but like in a world where like butchers and seamstresses and local shoe shops and all that kind of stuff are dying away because of Amazon and supermarkets, like holding on to pubs is going to be really important.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important cultural things that we are facing, is the death of the hospitality industry. And like, we can't allow that to happen. And I don't think it will. I think the evolution of non-alc in a way is such an important factor in keeping these places alive and in changing people's drinking habits, but like shifting them to get them back into hospitality venues. Because I think during COVID, the age of the home drinker became a real like issue that we're only really seeing the effects of now, the amount of people that are home drinkers. And it's actually about getting people back into venues with good options, because that's all it's about, isn't it? It's just about having options. You can zebra stripe, which I would love to do just to say I am doing, but obviously I'm not allowed to do that, so we won't. But, it's whatever you want to drink, you can drink. You can go there as a sober person, as a sober curious person, or as somebody that is just having a nice drink, and that's fine. So I think it is a really important thing, is the introduction of good alcohol-free options in these venues.
Totally, man. And I haven't really even thought, I don't know, maybe I've blocked out a lot of COVID, but, if you'd have grabbed 10 people in the street and said, like, what are 3 things that you want back tomorrow, apart from seeing their friends and family and maybe going into an office, it would have been, I just want to go to the pub.
Yeah.
I just want to go and sit down with a load of other people and overhear something someone's saying, or like be excited to see someone come to the door. Like, these are special places. And, if non-alc is one thing that can help them innovate and change in a changing landscape, then it's only got to be a good thing. And then all these people go, oh, what's the point? You're like, it's a pretty fucking big point, mate.
Yeah. So where do you think the future of the AF industry lies? What do you think it looks like? Do you think getting stuff on tap is the most important step forward, or do you think that there's more to it than that?
I think definitely from if I go to like a technical insight position, like availability and visibility is so important. So people being able to see taps, to see things on menus, it not be hidden in fridges. We call it a decision tree, and the decision tree is very easy to fall out of non-alc, to go, oh, they haven't got any non-alc beers, I'll just have a water. Like, people don't want to go, excuse me, did you tell me what's good, governor? So I think any visibility from that point of view, you're totally right with the insight of people wanting to hold pints is really important. Like, I was adamant I wanted to be in a 330ml bottle because I really think that that's an occasion of people drinking. You might be in a group of people with bottles as well. Ritual is really important. And I think, having things that people feel comfortable to be holding, and people like Lucky Saint with over 1,000 taps nationally now, I think they gave away 100,000 pints in January. All these things are super important. And I think what we're definitely going to see, as well as that adoption of in the on-premise of visibility driving it, we're going to see more and more space being given to supermarkets. And even like, the whole thing of like Lucky Saint being in a meal deal at Sainsbury's.
Yes,
like
wild.
Boom. But like, when you first like boke at it, as my wife would say, you then go, yeah, but why wouldn't I want like it? I don't want a Fanta with my sandwich. I quite like a beer and a sandwich. So I think that's starting to break down those barriers in terms of the real estate of that big shop, of where it's available. We won't be long until you can get like a non-alc beer in the cafe, for example. And then you've got places like McDonald's and all those kinds of stuff. Oh, in the football. I was chatting to a mate the other day, like, God, don't you just want to stand on the football and hold a pint? Like, why do you have to drink Bovril? And I know the historic stuff and all that kind of stuff. But if we can have this, I think we're going to see the availability and the prevalence of these brands grow and grow. And I think the other massive thing is we're going to see more and more of people, hopefully like me, who are just going, right, I'm going to make something because I want to make a nice non-alc drink. I'm not going to make a non-alc drink version of something. And I think that in wine, that in spirits, that in cider, that in beer, that in lager, even down to like, the RTD space, that Liars do. And I think Coligno have done bits, people just coming out and going, I'm not just going to respond to a insights department. I'm going to make something because it tastes great. It just happens not to have alcohol in. That's the future.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for your insight. It's been really interesting, actually. It's been a very different conversation to a lot of them. You've come at it from a very different place, which is just like, this given me a lot to think about. And it's stuff that I've never really gone into because I've not had any experience in this field. I just look at the stuff and drink the stuff and talk to the people that make the stuff, but don't really have anything to do with the wider industry. So thank you very much for stopping and talking to me. And
no worries, man.
I can't wait to drink batch number 2.
It's en route.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Sober Boozers Club podcast. My name is Ben Gibbs. You can find me on all the socials at Sober Boozers Club. If you do one thing after this episode, I beg you to go and source some Chance Clean Cider because it will change your life. It's available on Amazon, which is almost too handy in my opinion. So you go and do that and thank me later, I guess.